Every year, in the dead of night, human bodies are sold to the highest bidder. Not organ donors, not next of kin, just unclaimed corpses, auctioned off like antiques. To who? Medical schools, private collectors, religious cults, even dark web thrill seekers. It's called the corpse auction, and yes, it's real. When someone dies and no family steps forward, the body goes to the city morgue. But if no one claims the remains, state law often allows the government to quietly sell it. It's supposed to be for science, but there's almost no oversight. In cities like Detroit, Chicago, and Philadelphia, unclaimed bodies are sent to public universities or handed over to third-party brokers. And that's where the trail goes cold, because once these bodies leave the morgue, no one really knows where they end up. In most states, the unclaimed dead are treated like property. If you're wealthy, you die with a will. If you're poor, you die as inventory. One whistleblower in Cook County, Illinois, revealed that bodies were routinely sold without checks, and sometimes even without verifying the person had no living relatives. In 2017, the family of Marvin Ellis found out he was buried in a mass grave after being dissected in a private medical training seminar. No one asked permission, no one told them. They were never even notified he died.
Nobody told me anything.
In Los Angeles, a retired veteran named James Delgado went missing. His niece searched hospitals and morgues for months. Only later did she find out he had been cremated without consent after being partially dissected at a medical seminar hosted by a private university. His ashes were mailed to her in a box with no return address. A small group of companies profit from corpse sales. They're called body brokers. These aren't medical schools, they're middlemen. They receive unclaimed corpses from morgues, then resell body parts across the US and internationally. Legally, it's murky. In most states, it's perfectly legal to sell a whole body for educational purposes. But what happens when that body ends up in a plastic-wrapped freezer in someone's garage? In 2022, a Colorado woman named Megan Hess, who ran a funeral home, was convicted for dismembering bodies and selling them without consent. One buyer was a religious group who used body parts in a ritual. She made millions. In Phoenix, the Biological Resource Center was raided by the FBI. What they found was a horror show. Buckets of heads, arms, and legs, a man's torso sewn to a different body's head. Many remains were sourced from unclaimed cadavers and sold to research labs with falsified paperwork. You'd think this would be illegal, but the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act gives states wide power to transfer unclaimed bodies for science. Except there's no federal oversight, no tracking system, no audits. So when body brokers receive dozens of cadavers from state morgues, there's no follow-up. And when someone uses a body for unethical research, entertainment, or spiritual rituals, there's no penalty. In 2019, a body was donated to a university research program in Las Vegas. Instead of being used for anatomy, it was sold to the military and used in blast testing without the family's knowledge. The body was blown up in a simulation. The system is broken because no one's watching. Hospitals, medical schools, and labs are often desperate for cadavers to train doctors. So instead of ethical donations, they buy from brokers. In 2021, Reuters uncovered a body broker in Arizona who had over 1,200 human remains in unmarked containers, some mislabeled, others badly decomposed. And yes, he was licensed. Even worse, some of the bodies were from war veterans. Others had families who had never been contacted. It's legal trafficking, just dressed up in paperwork. In New York, a woman discovered her father's body, missing for weeks, had been sold to a lab in Europe. The funeral home never reported the body missing. She found out through a customs report after the body was flagged at an international airport. Imagine your father goes missing. Months later, you get a call. He died, but his body's gone. When you ask what happened, no one knows. Now imagine seeing his face in an online brochure for forensic seminar in Florida. That's what happened to Patricia Walker. She was horrified to discover her uncle's head had been sold and displayed at a conference. She thought he was buried. He was bought. A grieving son in Texas discovered his mother's remains had been mailed in parts to different research centers. One lab returned her lower half in a cooler. The upper half was still unaccounted for. This isn't rare, it's routine. Unclaimed bodies from poor, elderly, homeless, or marginalized communities are regularly auctioned off, sometimes in bulk, sometimes for profit, and nobody, not the police, not the city, not the coroner, takes responsibility. Why? Because dead people don't vote, and the poor don't have lawyers. What started as a gift for science became a pipeline of profit for the immoral. And the real cost? Our dignity. Here's where it gets darker. We're not just talking about science or donations. We're talking cold, hard cash. According to investigations by Reuters and the New York Times, a whole human body can be sold in parts for $3,000 to $10,000 or more, depending on how it's divided. Skulls can go for $600 to $1,200 each, spines fetch $900, a shoulder around $500, and a full cadaver, if sold intact to a university or lab, can bring in up to $5,000. But those who break the body into pieces make even more. Not all buyers are universities or labs. Some are black market collectors. There's an underground demand for real human remains, especially skulls, and the internet made it easier. On certain auction sites and forums, you can find listings for medical-grade skeletons, spines, and preserved brains. No questions asked. In 2020, a man in Massachusetts was arrested for trafficking stolen human remains from Harvard Medical School's anatomical program. He sold body parts on Facebook Marketplace and Instagram, disguised as medical supplies. Buyers included collectors, fetishists, and even members of obscure religious sects. A former mortuary assistant in Pennsylvania ran a side business reselling human jawbones and femurs to occult groups. Some buyers believed the bones carried spiritual energy if taken from unaware corpses, especially those who died tragically or anonymously. Authorities only stepped in after one of the packages was x-rayed at a shipping facility and discovered to contain an infant's spine. You may ask, how is this not illegal? The answer? Human tissue is federally regulated, but whole bodies, that's left to the states. There are no uniform federal laws for the commercial sale of cadavers in the US. That's why some states require documentation and ethical review boards, while others treat cadavers like cargo. In some jurisdictions, you need more paperwork to buy a dog than to sell a human spine. And body brokers often disguise transactions as fees for processing, transportation, or preservation, skirting the line between legal and immoral. There is a thriving shadow industry where the dead are currency, and because the dead can't speak, no one stops it. For the families left behind, the horror doesn't end with discovery. Many spend years battling bureaucracy just to find out where their loved one went. Most never get a clear answer. In Atlanta, a woman named Tanya spent over 5 years requesting death records and medical logs after her sister, a homeless woman, died from exposure. Only after a journalist intervened did she learn her sister's body was used in 5 different anatomy labs across 3 states. She was never asked. She was never notified. I couldn't mourn her, Tanya said, because I didn't know where she was. And that's the worst part. Not the sale, not even the dissection, but the silence. The system doesn't just take the body, it takes the closure. America's corpse economy reveals a haunting truth. The poor are valuable in death, but disposable in life. Their remains are picked clean by a system that sees cadavers not as people, but as potential profit. And until we demand transparency, accountability, and ethics, the corpse auction will go on. In warehouses, in labs, in garages, and maybe, one day, to someone you love. If this story disturbed you, share it. This isn't science. It's exploitation, and it's happening in your city right now. Subscribe to Rise, Rule, Ruin for more untold truths behind America's darkest systems, because no one else will shine a light on this. What's worse, the corpses sold in secret, or the fact that it's all technically legal? Drop your thoughts below. This is Rise, Rule, Ruin, where we expose the lies hiding in plain sight.